my view of brokerages and the relationship between a broker and an agent is definitely controversial. Okay. I don't see the value in brokers.
Hello, welcome to episode 238 of the Smart Agents Podcast. As always, my name is Michael Walter, and I'll be your host. On today's episode, we are joined by Shaune Corbett, 20-plus year industry vet and broker of Dallas-Fort Worth-based True West Realty Group. With more than 500 closings under his belt and winner of Best in Big D, Shaune is a wealth of knowledge for those looking to take their real estate careers to the next level. Throughout our conversation, Shaune emphasizes the importance of communication, problem-solving, and client engagement at every stage of the real estate process. He also dives into lead generation strategies, highlighting the need for agents to build their own communities and stay top of mind with clients without directly asking for business. But before we get on with the day's featured interview, if you or someone else on your team has an incredible story of real estate success or tips to share with our community, send us a message to feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new guests to inspire our listeners. And lastly, if you enjoy this conversation and want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. We stream on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube. All right, let's get on with our conversation with Shaune Corbett. If you're interested in learning more from Shaune, be sure to check out the episode description for links to his real estate training and podcast, Real Estate Success DFW. All right, well, really the way I like to start everything out is if you could just introduce yourself to us a little bit. Tell us, where you're at and how long you've been in the industry.
All right, I love it. Thank you for having me on, Michael. Shaune Corbett with True West Realty Group is a brand that I created. Probably doing it for about 20 plus years. In the last year or so, I created a podcast called Real Estate Success DFW, and kind of doing what you're doing, where I just do interviews, talk to agents, talk about their success, where are they going, what are they passionate about, and as far as career wise, I've done about a little bit more than 500 transactions. I've done about 300 plus million, and I'm right here in real estate in DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. That's where I started. That's where I got into real estate, and that's where I do coaching, training, and hosting my podcast. And I still do quite a bit of production. My goal is about 100 houses a year. I still have a heavy production going on, but if I could move out of the production and really focus on, this space, that would be my desire. That's what I would really like to do. I got into real estate. I was working for a company, HR vice president, for about 10 years working for them. And they had a custom home building company there. And I offered to them if they want, they were selling $1 million homes. I said, I'll sell your houses for free if you'll pay for and get me my real estate license and broker license. That way I had full control over, the commission. And we all agreed. So we did that with them for about 5 or 6 years. And then eventually I left that company and I just said, well, I've got a real estate broker license. I've got a brokerage. Let's see where it goes. And I started adding agents. I got up to about 10, and I was selling probably about 8-9 million a year at that time. And I decided I didn't want to run a brokerage anymore. I didn't want the liability. I didn't want to be responsible for everyone. And then I I moved to a cloud-based brokerage, and I went from 8-9 million a year to about almost 40 million individually. And then I went from about 10 agents to about 32 agents. I think is what I got up to. So it was just way better for me to leverage what I'm good at and not have to spend all my energy in spaces that I'm not so good at. So there's my story in a nutshell.
Right. Well, so kind of going back, was there some, something in particular about real estate that, interested you, prior to pitching to that company to get your license?
Yeah. So the idea of HR is to bring employee and employers together. Okay. There's a competing interest, and the competing interest creates a broker type opportunity where you get the buyer and the seller to work together. So I can see both sides pretty well. I think that's one of my gifts is I have a strong communication style, and I can communicate in crayon. If you've ever heard that before, I can typically take complex ideas or things that people don't understand and put it in a way they can understand. I did that in HR, and I do that in real estate. And that ability really helped me see the opportunity of solving real estate problems. I kind of look at real estate less about sales, less about buyers and sellers, and more about solving real estate problems, because everybody has a problem. Sellers need to sell, buyers need to buy, and they all have all kinds of things that hold them back from accomplishing that. And I have generally a pretty good vision of seeing where we can go to solve that problem. And I do that as a offer to people in one of my communities. I've got a couple of communities I've set up, and I solve real estate problems for them. Whatever they've got, it could be financial, it could be lending, it could be earnest money disputes, whatever it is. I've generally have ways of accomplishing and getting people through transactions with the least amount of pain. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's how I went from HR to brokerage. I see the same skills. I could have worked anywhere. I could have been a stockbroker. I could have gone up in HR. I could have gone into working for a Fortune 500 company. I just thought the ceiling was a little too low for what I wanted to do. And just to be perfectly candid, I'm not employable. I generally get fired from every job I ever work. So I kind of make myself so efficient that I don't have to be there all the time. A little bit of office humor. I was watching that movie, Office Space, and they were interviewing the main characters saying, "Hey, we've noticed you've been missing a lot of work lately." And he says, "Well, I haven't been really missing it." And that's kind of the way I feel about, being an employee. I'm just not that employable. I've probably had 10 jobs I've been fired from, so hopefully I don't fire myself from this job.
Right. Well, and so talking about, your ability to communicate and really make things, understandable for clients, and real estate is definitely one of those things where, it's stressful. So that already like kind of heightens the, it kind of gives people like that scrambled brain feeling about things. But so how did you, and how have you, honed your communication style to help clients, easily get through the transactions?
Sure. I have a lot of sayings I call it Corbett quips. Mm-hmm. Okay. Quips is just like a little note or a way of thinking about something. And I think about the transaction and what ways would help us get through it and cover, I call it the lowest common denominator. If you remember back in, we did fractions, we would try to strip down the numbers that were really complex and we couldn't understand them down to really simple numbers that we could wrap our mind around. So I use that kind of as an analogy of how to strip down the complex aspect of buying a home. For you and I, we're in the industry. Buying a home isn't that cumbersome, but for someone that's not doing it every day, they have so many things to think about that they have analysis paralysis, or they get really nervous about taking any steps forward because it affects so many other things. And I think my best advice on things like that is every conversation you have with either a buyer or seller, you need to always have a next step. And that gives a direction. Like let's say I'm talking even to a seller, and every week we're getting a few showings and things are not moving forward and they're not getting it sold and they're getting frustrated. You got to have some things to feed them to show that you're still engaged, you're still in charge, there's still opportunities to move it. And, I do the same thing with buyers. Every single time we talk, here's the next step. Even if they're just looking at houses. Okay, great. I'm glad we looked at those homes. We're not going to hang up and go away. No, now we need to decide, is this going to fit what we need today or is it not? Let's start making some decisions on how to move this thing forward. So that's probably one of the easiest ways to, explain or give credence to being able to provide any of your clients next step in the transaction to give them some confidence and make it comfortable for them doing complex things.
Yeah. How is that, communication style and helping, kind of walk people through the transaction and giving them those next step things to where it's not, we had this conversation. Now I guess I'll just sit back and wait, but now I'm always involved in the transaction. Have you seen by the time the transaction's over, do you feel like that has made those clients, more apt to refer you and things because you have kept them in the loop and they've been engaged throughout the entire time?
I generally, I have a lot of philosophies. I'm just going to say, one of them is I give people what they can handle and understand. I don't give them things they can't understand and handle. And there's things about our transactions that won't help them sleep at night. There's no reason to even make it a part of our decision-making progress. So everything that I do has to do with making decisions. So I give them enough information for them to make informed decisions, nothing more and nothing less. I kind of make it in a very simple space. So we go from start to finish. And a lot of times they finish and they're surprised it was that easy. Well, that's because I took a lot of the complexity out of it. I stripped it down to very simple terms. And it's helpful to have, a Gantt chart or some type of flow chart to say, here's where we are in the process. The next step's going to be on the chart is this, and this is what we're going to expect to see and go through that. I tell you what really helps, and this is what our experience really falls in, for agents out there that are newer and they want to be able to communicate this effectively in some of this space. When you're working with someone and you don't have the experience to know what you're looking at, obviously tag with somebody and say, here's what came up, here's what we offered. And I do this often on my problem solving calls. They give me what their problem is or what they're going through. And I say, that's good. Here's the way to kind of work through it. But this is more important now. This is going to create this problem in the future, or expect to have this as a problem in the future. Go ahead and tell them now. We could expect to have an appraisal issue. We could expect to have substantial repair items. Things like, we know seeing it, I want them to be prepared mentally. It's just like, a good one is going into a house that's built 30, 40 years ago. When I'm talking to the buyer, right, there's the obvious things. This is not a new home, but things that we need to think about is expect at least $3,000 to $5,000 in maintenance. Okay, we're going to expect that going into the inspection. He's going to flag probably about 30, 40 items. I don't want you losing sleep over it. The house is not going to burn down, but I do want us to focus on, the 4 core things that are incredibly expensive as part of owning a house. Then we're going to work from there, and we'll work backwards for concessions for minor repairs. And I have this conversation and get their mind around what we're going to walk in to see, because most people, they see that inspection report. Oh my gosh, this house is going to fall into the earth. No, we hired someone to tell you that. That's their job. They're supposed to scare you. And our job is to get realistic about what is our money buying, and is this still within the same space as a good opportunity for us? I know I talked a lot. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, well, I know, and I think with that specific example with the inspections, I think that's being proactive in anything is so much better than having to react to your client's reactions to anything that pops up.
This is really important, Michael. Something about being ahead of your client avoids surprises. Surprises are very frustrating for everybody, right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe the appraisal came in that short. Or, oh my gosh, this house has a lot of repairs. You got to have some forethought about the way we're approaching this. And whenever you look surprised or don't have an answer, it shows a gap in experience. That's why it's important to tag with someone that has the experience to cover the shortages. I rarely come across something that's really new or something that I won't have some reasonable way to get through. But there are times that it can't happen. I haven't done every possible transaction, but being able to know how to respond, act, give them a few steps going forward, and avoiding surprises is really, really important as a part of your process and leading them through the transaction. And find somebody that can help you. I mean, if you can't do it yourself.
Right. Absolutely. I want to touch on, how you yourself, when you first got started and how it's evolved over time, but lead generation, where are you reaching out to new clients? How are you getting new clients, and how that's evolved over the time of your career?
Yeah, I love that question. So I have a number of videos I've created called the Counterculture Agent. And my view of brokerages and the relationship between a broker and an agent is definitely controversial. Okay. I don't see the value in brokers. I don't see the value in them and their brand and what they offer, because buyers and sellers buy from agents, not brokers. And that's a big switch that's happened over the last 15, 20 years. I'm trying to help people with the mindset. It doesn't mean we don't need brokers, because we need them for liability. We need them for some problem solving. Unfortunately, most brokers that I work with don't actually sell real estate, so they don't even know how to solve problems. But there is some liability and legal things that they really need to be helpful in. But as far as I'm concerned, you need to find a community and find a way to build your business outside of whatever the broker can offer and give you, because they're not going to give you enough business to go operate a business. They're not. That's a misconception. My thinking is, let's have about 4 or 5 core buckets that we're going to fill in. There are referral websites and things we can work through that I've benefited from. Open houses is a really good opportunity for us to fill that bucket. If you turn it into a job, an actual responsibility for the weekend and not just 2 hours once a month, like we actually have to be intentional. And my view is, if you're a new agent, you should be working open houses until you can't work open houses. That means that we fill our bucket so full of buyers that you have to be available to show, and you can't even do open houses anymore. That's success. Like, that's where we want to grow if we're going to do open houses. Obviously, referrals are going to be very important. And after I finalized and developed the buckets and got them set up and organized and moving forward, my main thing, I have 3 phases of real estate that I view. If you want to grow to something where you're going from 1 transaction a month to 10 transactions a month. First transaction, fill the buckets, create the opportunity. Second phase is we're doing about 3 to 4 transactions a month. We're going to hyper focus on sphere of influence. And sphere of influence means that we're going to build out our primary focus, and we're going to touch them a certain number of times a year, and they're going to effectively give us referrals without having to ask for the business. I'm kind of in that moonlight phase of real estate. I get a referral every day of the week. I don't generally work with anybody that I don't know. And that means that I get to decide when I work and who I work with. That's the business model that I really spend a lot of time teaching and coaching others to do. So we're going to build out the sphere of influence. We're going to continue to add to the sphere of influence, and we're going to continue to do a touch system to stay in front of the sphere of influence. If you do that, if you have 300 people that you know by first name, they know you by first name, you're going to gain about 40 more transactions after 1 solid year of staying in front of them. And 40 transactions a year is enough for most agents to survive and pay their bills. So that's the target. That's the growth. My last phase is scalability. That's where we're going to be adding in VAs, contract to close coordinators, showing agents, and all those type of things, and social media backdrop managers and things like that. At that point, then you have effectively built a machine, and your hourly wage goes really high. Most agents never reach that point. And here's the thing. 97% of agents are selling 150,000 a year of GCI or less. Okay. Between you and I, that might sound like some pretty decent money, but we got to pay the broker. We have to pay the cost to run our business. We have to pay ourselves as employees. We have to pay all of our staff. You're down to probably about $75,000 net. I cannot feed my family of 4 on $75,000 net. So that means 97%, based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are not effectively managing and growing a business they can sustain for a family. That only leaves 3% that are actually making enough money to make this business work. So that really hit hard to me about 6 months ago. And I got serious about building out ways to improve the communities and give back to agents and help them actually achieve that better than that 3%.
Before we dive into our next topic, I have a question. Agents, are you ready to build instant trust with the sellers and buyers you meet? Well, with today's sponsor, Authorify, you can become a published author and gain instant credibility with potential clients. You'll easily win listings, and buyers will want you to represent them as their agent. Imagine handing somebody your book instead of a business card and watching them realize that you're the real deal and want to list with you. Even better, you can try this out for free because Authorify is giving you a free sample book so you can see exactly how it works. Simply go to authorify.com/sample to claim your free sample book now. I want to touch on those communities and your podcast and everything you've done, but I do want to ask, it's something you mentioned, with the sphere of influence is, making sure that the touch points and staying out in front of them. What are some of your, some of the things that over the years that you have found to be the best ways to stay in front so that it doesn't come across as, oh, this is another automated email, automated text type thing that is just kind of going out to his whole list?
Yeah, sure. I never ask for business. Okay. That's kind of where you're getting to. So the old style 15, 20 years ago, we're going to call everybody in our database. Do you know anybody needs to buy or sell a home? That nobody wants that anymore. No one wants to do that. And no one wants to be on the receiving end of that. And it's going to burn relationships when that's all you call someone for. Right. So the strategy is to stay top of mind. That's the goal. And to stay top of mind, maybe 20 years ago, you could do it on, 10, 12 touches a year. You're going to have to do about 40 touches a year now. And there are automated systems to help with a lot of that, a lot of heavy lifting. I do think every agent should build some type of newsletter based on who their network is. Mine is a little broad. I have to be a little bit more generic. I don't have my neighborhood in my city. I have Dallas, Fort Worth, because I have a lot of investors and other people in that space that live all over. So I want to offer real estate advice to help them understanding real estate in a practical sense that's good for everybody. It could be how to fight taxes and win. It could be how to file your homestead exemption and not pay for it. It could be, your home value is building equity, and equity can do X, Y, and Z. Did you know that? Just some type of educational value back to them. And we're going to do that 12 times a year. That's newsletters. The next thing we're going to have is we are in real estate. There's nothing wrong with establishing a connection with your audience person or your whoever it is that you're sending out information to on a CMA base, or I use a system called HomeBot. You know what HomeBot is?
I've heard about it. Actually, I interviewed a woman like 2 months ago that was all about it.
So HomeBot is incredible. Mm-hmm. It's lender paid. It's lender driven. And the reason why it's lender driven is because it's not about the value of the home. It's about the equity of the home. And people don't think about their home as an investment. I want them to stop only considering it as a place to live and a home, which is good. Nothing wrong with those things. But why not consider it also your biggest investment? And they don't naturally think of it that way. They might say it does, but they don't think about it that way. They think about it as a home. And that's okay. But there's a lot you can do with your home to multiply your effective equity and potential retirement growth. And it talks about your home in a Airbnb daily rate. Can you imagine as a homeowner to know your daily rate on your home? Right. 99.9% of people have never thought about it. Mm-hmm. We've never even considered it. But now, wow, my home is a money-making machine. Mm-hmm. My mortgage is $3,000 a month. If I rented it out per day, I could make $6,000 a month. Wow. They may never do it, but it's the ability to kind of stretch their mind. That's why I like HomeBot. And here, I'll tell you the other reason. I have an 82% open rate. Mm-hmm. Is there a piece of email that you can send out to everybody in your network and have an 82% open rate? Probably not a whole lot of things available. Right. And people are so accustomed to seeing them, they open it, they want to see what's happening. And I have a really high open rate. That's probably one of the other reasons I really like the system. And not to mention, it's very cheap. Mm-hmm. Under 500, I think it's $25 a month for agents. Wow. So, and 500 people that you have home addresses for is a lot of people. Yeah. I don't think most agents will get to that point. I have, because I've been doing this a long time and I've really made it a point. But I'll tell you, to add a little bit of story to this, there's a reason I came to this conclusion about 2 years ago when the market was terrible. After the height, then everybody stopped selling real estate for basically the last 2.5 years, right? So the real estate market's been, the transaction count is low. And if the transaction count is low, that means nobody's selling real estate. So I started seeing and realizing that I can't just live off all the fat that comes to me. All of a sudden, I have people that know, like, and trust me that are not calling me for real estate. And I had a few people specific in my life that should have, and they had no idea I sell real estate. I'm like, how does anybody not know I don't sell real estate?
Right.
Oh, they didn't know. And they didn't call me. And they made some big mistakes. Unfortunately, this is just how things go. I decided I'm never going to have that happen again. And I'm not going to call every one of my friends and ask them if they need to buy, sell real estate. I want to find a way to do it that's not offensive, and I stay top of mind. So I read a book by a guy named Brian Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking pretty far ahead, but the idea is I see him as kind of the godfather of sphere of influence training for real estate agents. Mm-hmm. And you might say, well, geez, everybody talks about sphere of influence. Here's the problem. I went to a training in January called Game On here in Dallas Fort Worth. Big event. A lot of big players there. Really, really, really big event. Every one of them got down building the sphere of influence part. This is how we're going to attract more people. This is how we're going to do events. We're going to send out gifts. We're going to do pop buys and all these different things. All that's great, but nobody effectively had any type of systematic system to stay in front of their sphere. And that part is the reason why the sphere can feed you. Just throwing a bunch of names into a bucket and not having any type of systematic way. That's what I was doing. And I would have people that know, like, and trust me. They weren't calling me. And I said, no more of that. I read his book and he had some really specific ways of approaching it. And then I converted it into a practical way that I can coach and teach. Well, first I got to do it. I did it. And then I could coach and teach others how to do it. And I just started that the end of January. I actually did a class that I taught and I charged for. I said, it's time for you guys to upgrade your business. And I have that on my school platform. That's where I sell all of my, my courses and trainings that I'm doing. So that's kind of where I was going. I just really wanted to emphasize that, we all have people that we know should have used us, but they didn't think about us. Now and I'll tell you this, everybody always forgets this. People closest to you are not going to hire you to sell real estate. Get over it.
Right.
You just got to get over it. My sister-in-law, they bought like 7 houses and not once will they call me, but they call me when they have a problem with the taxes in the tax district. So I get to get involved and show them how to fight their taxes and win, but never any other time. And I used to frustrate me. I'm like, what in the world? You've got access to like the best agent in Dallas Fort Worth and you don't call me to do any real estate. So you just got to get over that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you've mentioned it, you mentioned it with the school, and I also want to touch on your podcast, but what was it, what made you want to start giving back and, sharing what you've learned over your career to fellow agents?
Fundamentally, real estate is even on a really heavy, and I'm just saying this from my perspective, not everybody's built to coach and train. I think that I am. I think I have a vision. I have a lot of energy. I have a motivation that I can drive and help people push forward. I can see past the noise, and I really feel like that's a passion for me. But, I've been doing this a long time. I've sold a lot of real estate. Even if you had 100% sphere of influence business, it's a stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. I want to create things that have start, no end.
Yeah.
Okay. And that can be online training. I've got a book that I'm going to write on my way of approaching the sphere of influence. I'm working on that right now. And I have my podcast, right? Yeah. At some point I know it'll monetize. I think I'm already #1 podcast for Dallas Fort Worth for real estate agents. But I want to start monetizing that space as well and get paid on things that I'm excited and passionate about. I used to take issue with that. I used to think that, I would hold back and like, if I really enjoy it, maybe I shouldn't be getting paid. Maybe I should just volunteer, but it's okay to get paid just because you enjoy it. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I think that same mindset has probably kept a lot of people that could have been really great teachers and from, sharing what they're doing. And I totally agree. I don't think getting paid for your wisdom and your knowledge that you had to earn. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't either, and right now in school, I have it posted. It's $5.97 and it's about 4 hours of content with a actual action plan to take you from start to finish. So that's, if I had any product or anything to promote, that's probably the one product today. I just rolled it out about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Awesome. And then again, tell us about your podcast and where people can find that.
Yeah. So I'm on all the channels, right? I'm on Spotify, Apple, Google, and YouTube. I like YouTube because I can see where I'm at and views and things like that. All of my podcasts are getting posted on YouTube. That's probably the easiest way. And it's just under my name, Shaune Corbett, ShauneCorbett. And I'm the host of Real Estate Success DFW. And that would be the easiest way to probably connect and find. But it's on the other channels and it's great for listening. But I actually have like this and interactive, and it's got the video running as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, tell me, for somebody that's listening to this that has thought about, starting their own podcast, what has it done for your business and then for your ability to connect with the community?
Well, I have a vision about things and I see a future, and you can't just step in here and make, even right now I've got 13 episodes, right? I don't have enough to show success with it. And most people don't have the energy to say, oh my gosh, it's not hitting, this is too much work. I'm not getting anyone. Am I getting any traction? I would say, connect with other communities that are building podcasts. I did that on Facebook, and wow, the encouragement of each other. I've never seen it before. Nothing to do with real estate, but just encouraging other people. But the vision that I have with podcasting is, even me, just like you, Michael, you interview agents, we're not talking to buyers and sellers. We're not talking to, so how does it affect that audience if they're likely never going to, get on and look at? If I told my buyer or seller that I had the #1 podcast in Dallas, Fort Worth for real estate agents, they would never need to get on, and I would still have credibility with them. Right. That's right. The power of building something that's successful. Just like if I wrote a book, the Sphere of Influence book that I want to write, buyers and sellers have no reason to read that.
Right.
But if I'm a bestseller or have sold a number of copies or just being an author, all of a sudden, okay, this guy obviously has enough experience and wisdom that, I don't have to interview him. I'm just going to accept him. And quite honestly, I'll tell you funny things about me. I don't have a buyer presentation. I don't have a listing presentation. I only take listings. I'm not going to sell you. You tell me your problem. I'm going to tell you how we're going to solve your problem. And I assume that I'm working for you, and once all that works out, then we'll sign the agreement, and then I'll get it taken care of. That's not something really teachable. And I don't teach that, but it's great when you can reach such a heavy sphere of influence space that you get to decide who you work with, and you just get to decide when you work. I don't work weekends and evenings. You talk to many agents that say that.
Right.
I have 4 kids. I have a 4, 5, 9, and 10-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't work weekends and evenings because those are very full. And my wife's a teacher. So she's off. We're all together trying to tackle all these, events and things that the kids are doing. You can decide when you work too. These are things that can be a part of your, strategy. I would rather put all my energy into my sphere than cold call time blocking. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, and I've written this in my book in the entry space. You get burned out. Can you go 20 years making cold calls on FSBOs and, door knocking your neighborhood? That gets old. It'll wear you out. Wouldn't you rather just people call you and say, hey, we're ready to list? That's a whole lot easier conversation. So if you put all your energy focused on staying in front of your sphere, you don't have to be putting your energy in, and you can do daily time blocking things for your sphere. I got an example. You could do CMA a day. Have you ever heard that?
No.
So it's as simple as it sounds. We're going to come up with 5 of our people in our primary sphere of influence. And that means people that know you by first name, you know them by first name. We're going to send them an email. It's going to be a CMA of their area for the last 6 months. And you're going to do a video, and you're going to walk them through the CMA. You can do it on Loom. You can record video like a training video, but we're going to open it up, or you can record it in Zoom. I do it in Zoom because that's what I've got. It's, you can, it's very inexpensive to use. You record it and you say, hey, here's your neighborhood. I wanted you to be aware you've got about 2 or 3 houses that's really helping your home value. And you do this enough time, it becomes very easy and comfortable. And you're talking to them. You only need to record about 2 or 3 minutes. Do you think that a homeowner that has a video made about them from someone they know talking about their neighborhood would open and watch that video?
Right.
It's a pretty high likelihood. It's actually a really high likelihood. What if you did that every 2 or 3 months?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think you'd be top of mind when it's time to sell or buy. And it doesn't take that much from you. 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, you can get it down. And the guy that taught this, he said, use Google Earth, and you can actually have this interactive map thing that kind of flows to their address and it's kind of a cool feature. Right. And it's free. Yeah. And you do it, and then you say, hey, here's your neighborhood. You can get a system set up and start doing it. Man, I'm telling you, it's gold.
Oh yeah. Well, and I can't imagine. I have to imagine when that email pops up and I see the thumbnail of that video and that's my street,
Yeah,
I'm clicking on it.
for sure.
You've definitely caught my interest.
Yeah. I mean, it's directly to you. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about where your home is going and values. It's even stronger than what the HomeBot is, right? Because well, he put in the effort to do this. I'm at least going to give it a watch, right? The best part about all this stuff that I'm talking about is almost none of it costs any money.
Right.
HomeBot's $25 a month. I think I probably spend a few $100 a month in total to stay in front of my sphere of influence. Very affordable. And this is after putting all my systems together. I think if you knew that you could get 40 referrals a year on 300 people, you're going to spend $300 a month.
Right.
Or you can keep paying $5,000 to Zillow, which I did for years. I paid them over $200,000. And I doubt I made 150 in closed commissions. And I don't, because I don't work cold leads. I gave them all to my agents. Mm-hmm. But it was nowhere close to what I spent. I said, man, I'm tired of paying for leads. Even if it's not for me, I just think there's a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really do appreciate you, taking the time to talk with us today. And we will absolutely share, your podcast and all your social links for anybody listening to this that wants to connect with you. And also the school link. Do you have a specific link, or is that can be found?
Yeah, if you have this posted, I can send the link to my podcast and my school platform. It's free. I try to do all community related things. I try to make them all free because I want to connect with a lot of people. The only thing that costs money or any of my specific training classes, because it's going to change your life selling real estate. I think that's worth the investment for anybody. But outside of that, my communities are free. I've got a big one on Facebook that I just started about 2-3 weeks ago, and it's called Real Estate Success DFW. I try to keep that same brand. And that one, it allows me to hit a whole lot more agents at the same time. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I post on Instagram probably once or twice a day. And 80% of it is just personal stuff.
Right.
Like I don't put a lot of real estate stuff on there. And right now I'm putting in political stuff. How about that? Well, that gets some excitement going. Right. But I have a way of looking at politics and kind of cleaning out some of the extreme views of it. And I just like to create good quality discussions. So far, I've not had any hate on any of them. So we'll see where it goes with all that.
Awesome. Well, again, I really do appreciate you taking the time, and we will definitely share all those links for you.
Man, I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
I want to thank Shaune for joining us today. And remember, check out the episode description for links to his real estate training and podcast, Real Estate Success DFW. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an incredible story or tips to share with our community, send us a message to feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode, but remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.